Hello, everybody out there. How are we all doing? Let's do the usual sound test stuff, make sure everybody can hear me. And more lighting? Yeah, more lighting. All right. Fit in the chat, we recorded an invasion episode, and that'll probably be going up this next week. Um, April, we're gonna start trickling episodes back into the feed. We've had um, a lot of people with sick relatives and health problems and stuff, and yeah, it's been a really bad time. We didn't want to push anybody, and you know we 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 can't wait to play again and get stuff back into the feed. But I recorded a bunch of those cast catch ups, and they're going to be going up in the feed probably two at a time until we're back. So there will be content. There's always Patreon stuff. But today, we're going to be talking about balancing combat in 5th edition. Uh, Holy hell. There's so much to talk about. So, for those of you who are thinking about running games, or have already run some games and you just kind of found combat to be just unwieldy, kind of hard to get going and keep the reins. We're gonna be trying to give you guys some tips today, and first of all, talk about how the system should work, why it doesn't quite work, and what we can do to kind of fix things, kind of patch it up at home. So let's get started here. Uh, First of all, thank you everybody for hanging out. Really appreciate that. Obviously, we've got tons of stuff we're doing on Patreon, and you guys supporting us helps us do the show, helps us keep doing stuff like this. So you can head on over to patreon.com/DANDR to support the show. But first, let's talk about balancing combat. So challenge rating. We're going to get into challenge rating today. We're going to start with the fundamentals of stuff just in case you're getting into it or in case you need a refresher. Some people don't want to sit and read the entire, the DMG cover to cover. And I get that. There's a lot to go over. So, fundamentals of D&D combat, no matter what edition you're playing. We're assuming you're playing 5e because that's the latest one. But uh, these rules pretty much are all through every TTRPG, fantasy, that is. So, fundamentals. Combat's usually fatal for someone. Hopefully not the party, but usually it's assumed that the end of a fight, you're going to have dead bodies, be it, wolves or bears, bandits, orcs, whatever. That's what that's what you're assuming. Oh wow, my watch was listening to me the entire time and doing a transcript. That's weird. So that's that's number one. We're gonna have to establish these rules because there's a ton of variables and you can't account for everything. So going right down the list, your role as a DM is to push your party to the brink, make it a challenging fight, have there be some doubt as to whether or not they're going to get out. That's the perfect combat. They get into a fight, it's harrowing, and they come out feeling, accomplished. They feel like heroes. Obviously, you don't want them to walk into a fight and kick the shit out of everything and then just move on. They kind of feel like bullies or at the very least bored. There's no challenge. And you don't want to walk in and constantly be downing players or almost killing them or killing them right out. That's not your role as a DM. Obviously, if you have the one where it's too easy, you're going to have players just get bored, they get cocky, and then when an actual threat shows up, they might not be ready for it. If you have too, if you have it too hard, obviously that's the other end of the spectrum where you're probably going to lose players because no one wants to die constantly. You don't want to roll up a character, jump into a fight, and just end up dead. Uh, Not every fight needs to be an end of the world scenario where everything's on the line. Not every fight has to be a dragon, right? Sometimes it's townsfolk, sometimes it's slimes, sometimes it's whatever. But there's a difference between a fight that isn't challenging, but you still have to try versus a cakewalk. And obviously, you don't want players to get into a situation where they're in the combat record, they take a turn and realize, oh, I can't do anything. There's no way I could possibly hit this creature. You know, I rolled an 18 and still didn't do anything. So instantly you have the party just kind of feeling deflated, and we obviously don't want that. So what is challenge rating? Get ready, because this is most of the stream today. We're going to be talking about challenge rating a lot. So I'm trying to keep an eye on YouTube and Twitch, by the way. So if I didn't see a comment, just flag me down. I will. I promise I'll get to it. Challenge rating, at its core, this is the easiest way to describe it. Challenge rating is a number next to an encounter, a monster, a dungeon trap, whatever, that signifies the challenge of that thing. So challenge rating works like this. It's assuming you have a party of 4 adventurers. Doesn't matter, what the class makeup is. It doesn't matter, it's assuming they're decently geared, just normal. Everything's the most moderate version of the thing, right? So we have an example party we're going to go through, but just 4 people, right? So let's say all of them are level 3. So no one has more experience than the other. They all start at the same time. 4-person party level 3. And you want them to have a challenge, but not completely rip them apart. On paper, the total of the monsters that they're supposed to face shouldn't exceed 3, because that's their level. If you want it to be harder than what they're supposed to be able to deal with, then you would bump that up a bit. Even if, let's say, later on, obviously, players are going to get a lot of new abilities and skills and gear and all that. But let's break it down like this. This is our party. All of them level 3s. You got a barbarian, a wizard, you have a warrior, and a rogue. Now, this is a party with no healing, and you're probably not gonna have that. But let's just say. Now, every monster needs to be totaled. Yeah, yeah. I have a bunch of stuff like this sitting around, so I figured, okay, we don't, But let's say it's a party of orcs. Each one of these orcs is 1/2 challenge rating. So 6 of these guys equal a challenge rating of 3 for our 4 adventurers. So this, on paper, is a fair fight. And you have 6 of these guys, and they're going to be a handful for this party. But this isn't a deadly fight. There are tons of combat trackers online, and if you're doing things from the book, you're going to get 1 reading. But if you look at combat trackers and encounter balances online, you're going to get another, because there's adjusted math. There's a ton of math. So the way I'm describing it, this sounds easy, right? You got your party, 4 people. You got your orcs, 6 of them, equal challenge rating 3 for level 3. Easy peasy. We're done, right? No, because challenge rating can't take into account variables. And sadly, the higher the level of your party gets, the more variables there are. If, let's say, you add a party member, you can adjust the math. Usually you would just go, okay, well, we're gonna take 1/4 of that challenge rating and bump it up. So let's say we have 5 level 3 adventurers. Obviously now the 6 orcs aren't going to be as imposing as they were when there were 4 of them. So you'd have to bump up the challenge rating to like a CR4, something like that, to kind of get them in the ballpark, right? Bree just texted me. I am live, right? Okay. Um so here's where things are going to start getting tricky. So let's just keep this adventuring party. So let's add some dire wolves, right? 3 dire wolves. The images in the book may be different, but we got 3 dire wolves. Each one of these are a challenge rating 1. So we have less creatures, but the difficulty stays the same. This is still a perfectly balanced fight because the wolves have things like pack tactics, and they're larger creatures. They do a little more damage. They have a little bit more in terms of hit points. So you're compacting things, but it's the same level of challenge. The fight's going to go completely different because probably you got your barbarian up front, right? You got your wizard throwing things, but you have 2 other up close and personal fighters in this particular party. So everyone's going to be able to take on one of these things and kind of tank it. So let's take that away. Here's where the challenge rating system gets a little uh kind of squishy, right? Uh a single archer is a challenge rating 3. That one person. And this is one of the closest like monsters in the book that it's basically an adventurer, right? Uh this this archer has hi. I didn't do the Discord thing this time. I didn't see anybody in there. I'm sorry. So this archer has a multi attack, gets to shoot twice, right? But it has no way of getting away from somebody once they're close. So these 4 adventurers are going to roll this archer as soon as they close that gap. But on paper, this is supposed to be a fair fight. Obviously, this is when you start kind of breaking things down and going, okay, wait, I can't trust what's on paper. Usually, if someone gives you math, there's a correct answer. And this is a big failing with D&D 5e. For the most part, I like the system. Obviously, when we changed over, um, we were very used to 4e. We had homebrewed a ton of it, and I think it was easier to homebrew 4e. Whereas there's a lot of load-bearing stones in 5e, and when you shift things around and you change it, it all kind of falls apart much faster. Um, in the challenge rating system, so on paper, right now, this is a fair fight. It isn't really, but you might have a situation where this archer, if they're lucky, might down somebody before they get to her. She can't take on this entire party. There's nothing she's going to be able to do. She doesn't have a disengage action, uh, unless she uses her entire action to disengage. So, yeah, let's let's kind of build a graph to show you how this works out. So let's say levels 1 through 3. you can kind of build encounters fairly easy by following, as it's written, challenge rating. So if you're reading it straight out of the book and you're using it that way, that's fine. Like this, we're assuming for the entire run of your campaign, from 1 all the way to 20, let's say, that that sweet spot, that middle spot right there, that perfect. You have a lot of room. Like let's say you toss in another orc or you take away an orc. You still have a lot of room there where the fight is still challenging and fun. The further you level up, the smaller that window gets. So by the end, it is extremely easy to build an encounter that's either too lethal and you're going to down people right away and they don't feel like they have a chance to beat this thing, or far too easy and the big bad you've been building up, let's say they're a vampire, gets pushed down a flight of stairs and the fight's over before it even began. So, so this needs to be accounted for. And I would say this graph really starts changing between levels 4 and 6. Once adventurers hit level 5, they've unlocked whatever subclass they're going to be using. They have an extra attack action most of the time. We're going to be taking the barbarian and just kind of breaking this down really quickly to show you how out of control this gets, even on paper. Okay, so hi, Rachel. Hi, Fungus. Hi, everybody out there. Ryan. I see Ryan there. Bree. So, okay. Why does challenge rating fall apart? Uh, Again, this is Wizards of the Coast telling you we have a formula. And when someone tells you that, you think, oh, there's a right answer. There really isn't. Like if I told Ryan in the chat, hey, I need you to measure this room and give me the square footage so I can go buy tiles to redo the floor in this room. He's gonna he's gonna give me a number and then I have an answer. So when I go to Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever and I buy tile and I buy enough for that square footage, I have a right answer. I have the materials I need and I'm going to be able to go home and retile the floor. Challenge rating doesn't work like that because there's a lot of hard math involved. You can the most common version of assigning a challenge rating to, God forbid, a homebrew monster, you have to take its average damage output and average defense, and you can kind of extrapolate a challenge rating from that. But it doesn't take into account things like lair actions or legendary actions. If it's a big bad, you want it to have some kind of like a really cool set piece thing. Let's say it's Strahd, right? It's like, okay, he can turn into 1,000 bats, and you can do a bunch of different things there. I can summon wolves or whatever. The challenge rating can't take that and adjust the math for it on the fly. It can only take the average. So if you don't use any legendary actions in that fight, it can't it can't it can't adjust that on the fly. So it's just kind of assuming you're using one or two of your three legendary actions, maybe. And legendary actions are really, I'm going to bag on 5e a bit. Not only is challenge rating just kind of made up, the points don't matter. Telling people that if you just follow this, that like making up challenge ratings to begin with, it's just kind of needlessly frivolous, considering in 4e we had a system that I think was easier in terms of building encounters. Monsters had roles, you had things like minions and solos and elites. You automatically kind of had an idea of where those monsters belonged in a hierarchy and what you can change about them to build a new encounter. Those monsters had powers. And yeah, I, I think 4E came out 10 years too early. We're just now getting things like Foundry that can do math on the fly, and it's a lot easier. So I'm not straight up praising 4E. An example of an incredibly common legendary action that almost all monsters have after a certain level is legendary resistance. It is one of the most bullshit DM tricks. I hate it. Absolutely hate it. What legendary resistance is let's say you're playing a wizard and let's say you're whipping a fireball. Classic. You're whipping a fireball at like a boss vampire. Legendary resistance says that if I fail the dex save to dodge out of the way of that fireball, I can choose to succeed instead. What the fuck is that? Like, that is insane. That's that is the quickest way to spit in the face of your players, because not only is everything random, and if you're fighting a boss to begin with, odds are they have a good amount of odds to succeed on that saving throw anyway. So let's say I roll a 2. I completely whiff the roll. I can just choose to, I'm popping a legendary action. I succeed instead. That really kills the fun, right? Because nothing was gained in terms of role play. Nothing was gained in terms, like, I wasn't clever. I didn't think my way out of a situation. And players can't really do that. They have a lot of other tricks, don't get me wrong, but it's just such a lazy mechanic building feature. Like, it's just so weird to me that supposedly some of the greatest minds in RPG building, the best they can come up with is no, shit children do on a playground. It's like, no, I have a force field. No, it's just weird to me. So why does challenge rating fall apart? Taking our four person party. Oh God, for whatever reason, I can only now log in. Oh no, you're having trouble logging in. I'm sorry. Uh, Twitch is Twitch. It can be really difficult to log in once you're. Yeah, sorry about that. Taking our 4-person party. Let's break it down. Let's take it just one of these adventurers, right? Your tank. Let's take the barbarian. So at level 1, your barbarian has 12 hit points, let's say, depending on your con score, but it's going to be right in there. So your AC is 14. You can rage, which halves all physical damage you're going to take as long as they're raging, and the average damage output is about 12. Let's say they have a great axe. Let's say their strength score is pretty good, so their average is around that if they're raging. Okay. Let's add that orc. Just one of those orcs. It's a 1/2 challenge rating, and its armor class is 13. Hit points average 15 unless you roll for each of them. And this is a completely, it's a completely fair fight. This orc probably isn't going to be much of a challenge for this barbarian, and it shouldn't be. It is just, it's basically built to, on paper, this barbarian could take on 2 orcs and live. And we're just taking a human barbarian, right? No tricks, no nothing, like if you're a half orc barbarian. When you drop down to 0 hit points, you drop down to 1 instead. So you basically get a second chance. We're just taking racial benefits and pushing them off to the side. And I can't wait to read your comments. I know I'm going on and on. I've been thinking about this for weeks, because I've been playing 5e now for like 6 or 7 years. And I've never quite connected with it the way I connected to 4E. And I could never quite put my finger on it, but challenge rating's a big one. So let's take away the orc. Let's add the direwolf back. Okay, that thing is barreling down on you. It's ferocious. It's going to tear you apart. Barbarian is more than a match for it. And this is a challenge rating 1. So the Barbarian and Pippin are evenly matched. Okay. 14 armor class, same as the orc, but more hit points this time. So we got 37. So on paper, the Barbarian should be at a significant disadvantage, except for the fact that, and we're taking all attacks as just like, oh, you're going to miss, you're going to hit. It's up and down. We're not even counting crits. All damage is going to be halved because we're assuming the Barbarian is raging. So the wolf just has bite, which is an average of 10 damage, which means it's going to do 5 damage per hit. So this Barbarian can take 3 of those before going down, and that's assuming the wolf hits every single time. The Barbarian is doing an average of 12, again, assuming it's raging, which means the wolf can take about 4 of those before it goes down. Again, pretty even. So far, so good. Let's go back to the archer. This is a challenge rating 3, remember. So this archer should be able to whoop this barbarian's ass no problem. That isn't the way this is going to go, though. Let's say the archer gets a drop on the barbarian and gets to use Archer's Eye. As a bonus action, the archer can add 1d10 to its next attack roll. So it's obviously going to be using, like, its bow as the primary. So multi-attack, it can make 2 longbow shots. So let's say it gets off those 2 shots and uses Archer's Eye. The average damage of that is going to be 16 plus 1d10. So let's say it's 16 plus the average of 1d10, which is 6. So 21 damage total. If all those attacks hit, and let's just say the barbarian is raging, it might take the barbarian down. Then the barbarian gets to take a turn and is going to close that gap probably, because depending on your build, barbarians pretty early on can have like 40 movement speed, which it all depends on how you build your encounters, but just the barbarian, once it closes the gap, is going to beat the shit out of this archer every time. So let's kind of ignore the fact that we're guessing. We're guessing that the archer is going to get the drop. We're guessing that the barbarian's raging. That's still way closer of a fight than it should be, considering the archer is 3 times the strength on paper as the barbarian. Now let's level the barbarian up to 3 so it's a fair fight on paper. Holy shit. So we go just a standard barbarian build, Path of the Berserker, which gives you an extra attack as a bonus action. So we still have a barbarian at level 3. Average hit points 32. AC hasn't changed. Average damage is 24 because we're getting 2 attacks. And we're still having damage that's done to us while we're raging. This is even more wobbly than it was when the archer completely, outclassed this barbarian on paper. You can kind of see we're only at level 3, and the challenge rating system is falling apart in front of us because there's too many variables. Now, let's replace the barbarian with, say, a wizard. Let's take the wizard instead. That's a completely different fight, but you can't know who's, you know what I mean? You can't guess unless you engineer things so that the wizard is I don't know, away from the party and this archer gets the drop on them. Unless you engineer that stuff, you can't guess what your party's going to do. You can only kind of build these encounters and see what happens. So let's let's move on to a big one, the red dragon, right? This is why we play D&D. These big set piece fights. This thing is a challenge rating 10. Okay. By level 10, everything's all over the map. Math goes out the window. We are done with math. Taking those 4 adventurers, um, trying to account for each of their subclasses and special abilities that they have. The fact that most of them have either a huge sneak attack bonus at level 10, or they get an extra attack, or 2 extra attacks because of the bonus that the barbarian has. Taking all that into account is impossible. This is just out of the book. So this dragon, no legendary actions, no nothing, right? It's got its fire breath, it's got a multi attack, it's going to make 3 attacks, 1 with its bite and 2 with its claws. So what are we looking at? An average of 26 damage from claws and 17 from a bite. That's a lot. Unless you're a barbarian. The barbarian still taking half damage from physical attacks. So the fire breath's a concern, but everything else is tankable. Average hit points for this barbarian at level 10 is 105. That's more than half of the hit points of a challenge rating 10 dragon. One party member. This barbarian can easily stand up and pick at this dragon, tank it, and have everyone else just do damage, or buff him or healing or whatever. By level 10, the challenge rating melts. It's gone. So by 20, you're just making up numbers. It doesn't, none of it matters. The barbarian by this point, let's see, doing an average of 36 damage per turn, not counting any crits or anything like that. It's moving 40 feet. It has advantage on initiative. Yeah, and it's going to be able to stand toe to toe. And this is also, take this in mind. This is assuming this barbarian hasn't found any special gear. This is all the base gear he had as level 1. That's not going to happen. But you can't account for that in the book's version of the math. You don't know if your barbarian has found a legendary great axe or a trinket that gives him advantage on elemental saving throws, let's say. You can't account for that. So someone telling you that there's a formula in D&D that balances encounters is a lie. Flat out a lie. I haven't used challenge rating as an indicator for how hard a fight is in years because it doesn't work. Already, the barbarian can stand up to this dragon and probably make this fight last quite a while. There's 3 other people back here. There's a wizard. There's a rogue that can sneak around and do a ton of sneak attack damage. Let's say now you're flanking the dragon. This barbarian has advantage on all attacks. There's so many variables that there's no way you can go, oh, okay, they're flanking. Well, then we'll carry the 2, and the formula is gone. It doesn't matter. So I am going to read. I expected more pushback in the comments. Thank you. I do want to read all these. So we know the challenge rating is exceedingly liquid. It's malleable. It changes so drastically after characters start getting interesting. They start unlocking stuff that that first level 3 spell slot from a wizard. Oh my god, I get to cast Fireball. That changes the game right off the bat. You're hitting multiple characters. If they succeed, if they fail their saving throws, it does more damage. There's so many options and spells and abilities in D&D that you have two choices. You either out of the book limit what your characters can choose so that you have more control over making fights, or you enhance creatures to make them a challenge for players. Obviously, you don't want to do the first one. Limiting what a player can do is usually the wrong way to go. You don't want to tell people, oh, you can't do this, because it's your job to kind of position yourself around the party. You have to be ready, especially let's say it's a pickup game and you're hosting it for your friends. Someone might join at some point. You got to be able to make adjustments and kind of be malleable yourself and change things. Before I go rambling on about possible solutions, let me read more of these comments. Holy shit. Okay. Let's see. Oh, hi, L. L's at work. Oh, yeah. Mid to late game D&D. This is G Soto. Mid to late game D&D 4th edition became such a pain with tracking status effects and lingering powers, but I liked it because martial characters had such a wider range other than eye attack or grapple in combat. That was one of the first things when we were changing from 4E to 5E. Challenge rating was a big one. Spell slots were the next thing. I hate spell slots. I think it's a stupid system. I think there's a lot of things in 5e that are needlessly complicated for no reason. Challenge rating is a ton of math for no payoff. Absolutely none. Someone from Wizards of the Coast, I don't think, could sit down and come up with an encounter that is completely balanced. Anything other than like level 1 or 2, because you just can't. The game isn't built for that. When you can put things like minions in, where minions, picture those orcs. Picture there was one elite orc, like a warband leader, and then the rest of the orcs were minions, which means they still had a decent amount of AC. They still had enough power in their swing, but when they take one hit, they fall down. They are done. So they're still a threat, but they're dispensable. You can deal with them, and it isn't something that you need to panic over. Everything in D&D 5e, that is, everything in D&D 5e has a wealth of hit points. So even the tiniest kobold has more than one hit point. So when you're when you're trying to build an encounter, you can't really know how hard or how often your party's going to hit or the monsters. So let's take the dragon scenario. Let's go back to that. So let's say we wanted to bump up the difficulty of this dragon. Let's say we looked at the hit points and said, okay, well, the average is 178. And if we roll, we might get higher, we might get lower. So let's just say you want to have, let's say, I don't know, 250. You want to have at least double what the barbarian has in terms of hit points. All right. You don't know whether your party's going to have a good dice night or a bad dice night. None of this is accounting for crits. It can't, because there is so much. Go to Reddit and look up dice percentages, and my God, you can spend days getting lost in the math and trying to understand the differences between a D20 system and a 3D6 system and all that. And at the end of the day, all you can do is a calculation for averages. Not if your party's going to have a hot hand or not what decisions they're going to make. I play with 4 different Patreon groups. Some of them are outright suicidal, and I could build the same encounter for all 4 groups. It's going to end up completely wild no matter what. There's no way to rein that in. Um, Rob, I mean, I know plenty of people who pretty much run 5e as if it were a board game, different styles. Not my bag, but I see it. Now, Level Up Advanced 5e from Ian Publishing, it's pretty much what I run these days. I that is like on Foundry, that's an option. Um, put a pin in that. I'm gonna I'm gonna get back. Rachel, maybe that's what's going wrong when our group fights dragons. None of us are barbarians. Every dragon we've encountered has TPK'd in round one or two, and yeah, that's obviously that's not what I want to do as a DM. I want to come in. I want to challenge everybody. I want it to be a fun fight. I want there to be a sense of nail biting anticipation. I personally don't get that with 5e. I think a lot, and I used to take this personally, a lot of people who have either left the show, stopped listening, came back, checked it out, and said, wow, this is really different. And those people always say, oh, arc one's the best arc because, you know, there were all these moments in the show. Those moments were built from every character having cool shit to do. 5e treats martial characters pretty poorly. And warlocks. I no one's going to defend a warlock, but um, all of these character classes should feel special. This barbarian, as powerful as he is on paper, let's say he does the average amount of damage a turn, and he does it every single turn is, I'm going to try to hit the dragon with my axe. That's it. There's no cool spell names. There's no there's no adjustability. There's no, oh, I'm going to try and, you know, grip this with two hands and try extra hard. And, you know, you have things like reckless attack that give you advantage on your attack roll, but enemies then get advantage to attack you. That's the most you have as that class to kind of mix things up. It gets boring after your 20th fight. Think of all the moments back in the day with, you know what? Perfect. Let's take Yenward. Yenward would have been a barbarian in 5e. Instead of crushing swing or knee smash or anything, like to give players kind of like a starting point. Every attack is, it's like, okay, how do I come up with a cool way to describe me swinging this fucking axe again? Because I am out of descriptors. I have lost. Uh, you know, I just, the system isn't giving much to martial players to kind of incentivize them beyond making them stronger. All spellcasting classes get a plethora of cool shit to do. Utility, even if it's just damage. So you have, as a wizard, there are different classes of spellcaster you can be. If you want to be evocation, that gives you a special set of things that just you can do. Same thing with illusion magic, with destruction magic, whatever it is. And that barbarian at level 10, 11, 12, 13 is going to cast Hit Dude. And that's it. I think it makes people lose interest. I think it not only makes the game harder to balance, it makes it harder to incentivize people because the only thing players have to look forward to is getting more powerful, not becoming more interesting, getting more powerful. And that's why D&D 5e ends up being more unbalanced than 4e. 4e was tedious on a pen and paper level. Holy shit. I said so many bad things about 4e because keeping track of status effects, keeping track of spheres and cones and squares and all that stuff. And if someone was poisoned, if someone was slowed, if someone, keeping track of all that stuff was tedious. On a modern table, I think it would be very manageable, and I think it gives people more. I think it just gives them a bit more to work with. So, 5e is a level up simulator, says Fungus. Math Guy Dave says 2024 Barbarian is a lot better post level 10. Yeah, and this is also obviously just taking stuff in the player's handbook. Not any of the 50 new books that have come out for D&D 5e since the 3 original ones, the Monster Manual, DMG, and Player's Guide. There are tons of options, crazy shit you can do. And, I there's obviously you're adjusting for taste. Like, if you don't want to add the Rick and Morty book to your setting, totally understandable. But there's a lot of other stuff that is much more, there's Tasha's, which is just a great expansion of new magic and rules and stuff, but it's new stuff you have to balance, and it's stuff that you have to kind of keep up on. So I'm going to give you some tips on what I do to help the situation. I'm by no means perfect at it. Things are going to happen. That graph earlier, it gets that sweet spot, that threading the needle gets tighter and tighter the higher the level you're dealing with. If you're dealing with, God help you, like a level 17, 18, 19 campaign, I have yet to do that, and there's a reason. I don't even know where I would start for balancing that, because at a certain point, you have to throw old gods or demons at them just to keep them busy for a while. Let's see. Rachel, going back to the dragon thing, it's almost never been your fault that we had a party wipe. Our group makes unhinged decisions, and every dragon was our own doing somehow. Ultimately, it's my fault because I built the encounter, and I feel bad whenever players die, especially an entire party wipe. It took a while in 5e to get my first, oh, everyone's dead. It felt terrible. I felt like in 4e we had player deaths here and there, and I feel like in 5e it was easier to get to that. And it's obviously experience is going to help you. Testing fights, you can't guess what your party's going to do, but you can take their basic characters and kind of, it's like playing a chess game with yourself, just kind of running a basic encounter, right? And you can get a sense of how difficult something is the further you get into it. Obviously, if you understand your player's playstyle, let's say they are unhinged. Let's say they're going to take unnecessary risks, and that. You can kind of build things so that you can maybe account for one or two. It's like, oh yeah, the wizard's going to whip a fireball into his own party to do damage. It's like, yeah, okay, you can. At a certain point, players are, they're responsible, but if the base fight coming out of the gate is so daunting that players feel helpless or hopeless or just don't have the right tools for the job, you failed. Rob sent me, okay, let me see here. Rob sent me a picture. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. So, okay. Rob sent me basically for advanced 5e. There are combat maneuvers, just like we played Castles and Crusades. And one of the things, One of the things that we really liked about it was there's a bunch of maneuvers that even martial characters can do, like calling a shot, where you get a huge negative to your swing, but if it hits, it's a home run. It's an automatic crit. You're going to deal tons of damage. So that instantly made a character standing up front with a sword and a shield a bit more interesting. It's like, oh, I have options. Okay, I'm just not used to that in 5e. You have actions that you can take, but they're things like disengage, which is run, and that's your whole turn. I cannot tell you how many fights I've had in 5e that resorted to, all right, I'm going to swing. Oh, I missed. Guess that's the end of my turn. And they feel like that's all they can do. They can't run away or they'll get hit. They can't do anything if they did run away because they're a martial character. They're up front. They're a barbarian. They're they're a knight. They're whatever. I've had so many people just kind of feel like there's nothing I can do. Meanwhile, the assassin over here is going to kickflip over this box and shank the thing, probably hit and do just a fuck ton of sneak attack damage. But I have to stand here for that to be a thing. So uh, we have obviously we have a lot of work to do as dungeon masters to kind of fix this problem. I would say after level 5, start doing things like this. Start bumping up the difficulty of the fight, even if on paper it says the fight is deadly. There's wiggle room. There's like a Venn diagram. I use a tool on Foundry, and it's helped quite a bit. There's an encounter balance tool. So as you're building an encounter in the combat tracker, it takes all of the relevant stats and everything, but it also takes things into account like subclass and the actual amount of hit points and stuff, and building the dragon versus barbarian encounter. Building that encounter in, let's say, D&D Beyond, it said, yeah, that's deadly. Building it on the table, it was an easy fight, which really shocked me that the discrepancy's that big. And that's only at level 10. That's halfway to 20. I can't imagine what running a level 20 campaign's like. Has anyone in the chat done that? And if so, what would you say your track record was for building building encounters? Did they feel fair? Was it something that at the end of the day you were like, yeah, that was a good challenge, that was a good fight, and we went back and forth? um I'll tell you some hot tips. just just from big boss fights, I've learned that a solo fight with any party above level like 7, you don't want to just have one creature that they're fighting, even if it's an extremely on paper it outclasses them. Let's say it's a vampire lord. You're like, okay, this thing's she's got crazy strength, lots of hit points. Every creature has a weakness, and just taking the base stuff that a balanced party's going to have, we're going to probably have some kind of healer right off the bat, so damage is going to get undone. You might have someone in that party that does radiant damage, so that's going to count for double what would normally be physical damage to that vampire. You are going to have characters that have spells that are going to maybe slow or petrify or weaken or anything. And all of a sudden, a fight on paper that is supposed to be like the bout of the century turns into a completely trivial thing because the party just might have the right tools for the job. If you take if you take stuff like the radiant damage out, Maybe they don't have a paladin. Maybe they don't have a straight up cleric. They have like a druid or they have a bard. It's different. Like, it's going to change, and plan for the worst case scenario. If you know you have a vampire lord coming up and you know that that party has, let's say, the right tools, you need to plan ahead for that. You might want a minion or two. You might want to use the environment to your advantage. There might be pillars, they might be curtains, there might be whatever. Make that a part of the fight. Make it something that can alter things without you changing hit points, without you changing stats, without you fudging rolls. The more tools you have at your disposal that aren't just things like legendary resistance, the more things you have in your disposal, um, the the more tools you'll have in the heat of a fight that you can use to kind of even the playing field a little bit. Let's see. Rob, I'm running an average CR16 fights rate now for my level 9 party, and it's usually hit or miss whether the party is ever in real danger. But if I go up to a total of CR17, it's close to a TPK 2 rounds in. And there's that's kind of the problem with taking average damage. So, okay, let's let's do a physical description. Well, thank you for we're gifting subs. Thank you. Thank you, Nikadex. So let's take just average damage. You're a rogue and you're stabbing someone, you're dealing, let's say it's just a dagger. So you're dealing 1d4 plus sneak attack, which is like 2d6. By the time you get up to, 7, 8, 9 sneak attack die, that's a lot of variables. If you take a fistful of d6s and just whip them at the screen, who knows what you're going to get. You can kind of prepare if you're like, okay, I have 12 hit points. How many d6 are you throwing? 2? Okay. You can kind of plan for that. If it's 7 or 8 and it's just completely random, then yeah, that's an unknown that you can't plan for, really. Nicodex is being super generous. Let's see. Elle's stuck at work, and it's another 12-hour shift, and yeah, this job is just kicking the crap out of her. So if you want to support our Patreon, one day Elle can work for the company, and yeah, you can go to patreon.com/DANDR and help support things. So I have bagged a lot on 5e, and I want to talk to you guys. Like, let's put the show aside for a minute. Let's get real. God, my mouth is dry now. I have been doing this hobby since 2012. In April, it'll be 12 years. By the time we hit Theriathon, it is actually on our anniversary this year. And it'll be 12 years of running D&D. I've run other games. I've run Vampire. I've run Blades in the Dark. I've run, a little bit of Cyberpunk, stuff like that. Stars Without Number we're doing right now. We're, I've had the opportunity to look at other systems. I don't think I want to run D&D that much longer. I don't like supporting Wizards as a company. Whatever we felt about them 10 years ago when they were doing stuff, they have fucked over the community dozens of times. They've screwed over artists. They are constantly so obsessed with profit that even really cool things that have happened to the hobby, like the D&D movie, are probably going to get screwed up. Larian Studios doesn't want to do any more DLC for an incredible game like Baldur's Gate 3. I don't want to support them much longer. However, the last time we trusted a company and really took a leap was with Cortex, and that went terribly. It was too far away from what listeners wanted. I don't think it provided the story beats we were hoping for. I think it was too wishy-washy. It was kind of the challenge rating system of systems. I don't think, I know for a fact the cast didn't identify with it, and I have never gotten rid of the idea of creating my own system. It is, I think it's a thing every DM gets in their head, but I have played hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of games of D&D over the years, thousands of hours worth. And eventually, I think I could put something together that people would really want to play. I am very far away from that. But what I want to do is I want to try new systems every month. I asked on the Patreon app, you can kind of have chats with people. You can't do that on the base website yet. I don't know why. But I asked, hey, what's your favorite systems? And like, why? I want to take a system every month and just kind of study it, get the vibe for it. Not really run it. I don't have the time to run more games, but I want to get the feeling of each system. Why does it feel this way? Why? What are things that are cool about it? What does it succeed at? What does it fail at? What's the general vibe in terms of support from the community? And I want to keep studying systems and just get more experiences, play the field. And eventually I want to create something that I think people would really enjoy. And I think that's going to be Patreon content. I think I'm going to document the entire thing, and I've been thinking about it for a long time. Bree's been pushing for it, and I don't know if it's going to be. I don't know if it's going to be any good. I can't promise it's going to be good, but I promise you I have a lot of ideas, and I've been trying to tackle this from just an analytical standpoint, like just not just math, but how does it feel? And yeah, I'm gonna post it. I'm gonna every month. I think starting next month, I'm gonna just take a system. I'm gonna sit down. I'm gonna learn it. I'm gonna talk about what I like about it, what I don't like about it, and I'm gonna continue to just post thoughts about a system I would want to create and run. And I I I I don't know what it's going to turn into, but I would appreciate any support we get. And I'll probably be replacing the Dungeon Smith workshop with that because I only have so much bandwidth, but I am still up to help people with their campaigns. I'm still up for, I'm always up for helping a fellow DM make sure things run smoothly, or a player. But yeah, no, I want to work on that. Rob says, I love collecting other people's house rules to try. Rob has an extensive collection of stuff. Fit, I wasn't up for the Cortex change at first, but I was willing to give it a shot because I love the show. After what they did with you guys, I fully support you making your own. Will it be different from the norm? Yes, but I feel like fans will keep an open mind and maybe even integrate it into their own homes. Who knows? Uh, One of the big things, it's scary to make a change like that because one of the big things is 5e is something that pulls in folks because they know it. There's a reason. There's a reason channels like Dimension 20 and Critical Role get casual audiences because 5e's the thing. So when something like Baldur's Gate 3 comes out, they go, oh shit, I know this because yeah, okay. And the D&D movie references things like that. So it's easy to kind of get new people. Cortex is strange and alien to people. There are 1,000 RPG systems out there, so it can be difficult to get people enticed by that. We just joined the Pickaxe Network. We think that's going to be an influx of listeners, and we think that it's going to be really good for the show. It's very easy to lose people. It's very hard to get new people. So I don't think there's ever going to be a really good time to work on this project I'm describing. But if you have ideas for it, if you have a name for it, if you have systems you want me to look at and try, I could really use the help. So please let me know. Let me kind of crawl into your head and walk around a little bit. What do you run? What do you like? Why do you like it? Vathrak, I think you should study Legendary Adventures, something no one plays but from Gary Gygax. I like some of the stuff in that system. I'll check it out. I'll add it to a list. So the whiteboard back here is full of stuff, just ideas. I have a OneNote app, a OneNote document that I just open, and I keep adding stuff to it. And some of it's really vague. Some of it's like, is this a thing? Maybe, I don't know. And some of it's just concrete. It's like, here are 11 things I don't like about RPG systems in general, like those vibes. How do we limit that? How do we kind of reinvent the wheel in in a way that's digestible? Because I looked at GURPS. GURPS is hardcore math. Break it like it's one of those things where Cortex is too wishy-washy, and there are systems that are just too they're too dense. So there's got to be something in between. And yeah, I think I'm going to work on that, and I'm going to just share things as I work on it. And yeah, I hope you guys really enjoy it. Let's see, Baxter. I like your storytelling over the system. I tried Cortex personally and didn't like it. It's varying on difficulty checks. 5e is just familiar. If you made your own system and just took bits but made it better, like Pathfinder, um, then yeah, I mean, yeah, we might lose people, we might not. I don't know. But it's been in my head too long. I gotta try. So thank you guys so much for sitting down. Again, we make a living off Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/DANDR. We'll probably be switching up stuff so that the Dungeon Smith workshop will probably get replaced with this new thing. I don't even know what it's going to be called or whatever yet, but we'll start a discussion over there. And um, I may even do like like really early stuff. It's like, hey, I'm working on this mechanic. What do you think? Like, weigh in. Like, let me know. So yeah, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. This got rambly towards the end. Absolutely low level. Never bring up the situation. Games of GURPS is good. You have someone ask, but what really is the damage of falling out of a plane at 6,000 feet? And you have to bust out another book. Um, I ramble a lot. Thank you guys. I'll see you in a few more hours, and I'll have cookies and stuff baked when you get home. Maybe brownies. I don't know, but there'll be something here. Thank you guys so much, and as always, if you have any suggestions for us, if you have any criticisms, send me a message on Discord. Send us a message on Patreon. We're always listening, and we'll see you guys next time for something. So, bye everybody. Take care.